Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's geography lesson. My name is Nomthandazo Malembe. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Phakama Research and Development. Today, we are focusing on the revision paper 2. We will be focusing on question 1. But before we start with our revision, I just want us to go through our lesson objective today as we are focusing on paper 2, question 1, which is your settlement geography. We're going to look at the rural settlement as well as the urban settlement. Then, to go through our exam tips for paper 2, we're going to start with our structure of the paper, which is we're looking at the mark allocation, which is 150. After that, we're looking at our duration for the paper, which is 3 hours. Then to further break down our question paper, it has 2 sections, section A as well as your section B. Under section A, you will have your question 1 as well as your question 2. Both question 1 and question 2 will carry 60 marks. And then section B is where you will have your map work questions with 30 marks. Then again, looking into question 1, as our focus is on question 1 today. Under question 1, you will find questions based on the rural as well as the urban settlement. So you will first have the short objective questions. Those are your one-word questions. It will be 15 marks. And then after that, you will have 3 questions that are based on this rural or the urban settlement. So each question is 15 marks. Amongst those 3 questions, you will have one with a paragraph question. Then you move over to question 2, which is your economic geography. Under economic geography, again, you will have your short objective questions with 15 marks. And then after that, you will have 3 questions based on the economic geography. Amongst those 3 questions, there will be that one question with a paragraph question. Then you move over to section B, which is your question 3. Under question 3, you will have your map work questions. They are 30 marks. So the further breakdown of these 30 marks, you have your map skills as well as your calculation with 10 marks. And then map interpretation, it will be 12 marks. And your GIS questions will be 8 marks. And also, we're going to look at the exam tips. Remember, these are the things that you should practice every day when you are writing your exam. So number 1, you will need to read the questions carefully. And secondly, you need to make sure that you read the questions twice before you even answer so that you understand the question better. And then after that, you need to underline the keywords as well as the action verb. By underlining these 2, you will further get a clarity on what the question is all about. And then after that, you need to check the mark allocation. Some of the questions may not specify, mention 2, or give 2, or give 3, or give 4. But looking at the mark allocation, if it's saying 2 times 1, it means you need to give 2. Or it is saying 3 times 2, it means you need to give 3 responses. Then your paragraph question will have your 4 times 2. There you need to give 4 responses so that you don't miss any mark. After that, you need to study the diagram. Remember, each and every question you will be given a diagram. So study the diagram further, you read the infographic, and also you go into the features that are in the diagram so that it will give you a clue on how you should structure your answers. So we have come to an end of our exam tips. So now let us start with our revision for today. Remember, we said our focus is on question 1. So under question 1, you will have the first figure, which is figure 1.1. Your figure 1.1 is your short objective questions. They may come as column A as well as column B, or you have to choose the terms in the brackets that will make the statement correct, or you can be given a multiple choice questions. So for this one, figure 1.1, you choose the correct word from those given in the bracket. So you only write the word next to the question number, which is question 1.2.1 to 1.2.7. That is an example. So after that, we are given the urban expansion or the urbanization. It's our first question. It refers to the increase in the percentage of the people living in the urban areas. So again, you need to choose, does this statement match the urban expansion or the urbanization? Secondly, the urban growth or the rate of urbanization refers to the pace at which the urbanization takes place. Remember, we said you need to underline the keywords as well as the action verb. So starting with your 1.1.1, refer to the increase. We are looking into the increase in the percentage of the people who are living in the urban areas. Then your second question we are looking at, it refers to the pace. So it's the pace at which the urbanization takes place. And then your third question, the low order or your high order services are required on a daily basis. So the question is talking about the services that are required on a daily basis. So I'm going to give you 1 minute per question. You have 3 questions that are being displayed, which means I'm going to give you 3 minutes. And then after 3 minutes, we do the correction. Right, grade 12. We're looking there. We're going to go through our next question so that we can do the corrections at once. So you have your 1.1.4 up to 1.1.8. Again, it's the maximum distance. You are looking there, it's the maximum distance a consumer is willing to travel. So again, willing to travel to purchase a good. Does that reflect a threshold population or the range of goods? Then question number 5, the overcrowding is a result of an urban, does it an urban growth or an urban expansion? Then number 6, the percentage of the number of people living in the areas, in the urban areas, is that a level of urbanization or the urban population? So we are looking at the percentage of the number of people which are living in the urban areas. Then question 7, developed countries have a high or a low rate of urbanization. The key is the developed countries. In grade 9, we have learned what kind of countries are called developed. Does it have a high or a low rate of urbanization? Then your last question, towns that develop at an important intersection. So we are talking about the towns that develop at the important intersection. We have junction as well as the commuter town. So you have your 6 questions, which means I'm going to give you 6 minutes. And then after 6 minutes, we will do the corrections starting from 1.1.1 up to 1.1.8. Right, grade 12, we're now coming into our corrections. So looking at our corrections, the first question, it says the urban expansion as well as urbanization refers to the increase of the percentage of people who are living in the urban areas. So the correct answer there is the urbanization. Why? Because when we're talking about the urban expansion, we're talking about the increase in the buildings as well as the increase in the population. So the statement only focuses on the people. So therefore, the answer is urbanization. Secondly, the urban growth as well as the rate of urbanization refers to the pace, because the question is talking about the pace. So therefore, it gives us an answer that this is the rate of urbanization. And then after that, your question number 3, is it a low order or a high order that deals with the services that are required on a daily basis? You will remember that we said the low order are those services that are required daily and you cannot travel for them. So we call them the low order service. Then we move to question 1.1.4. Your question 1.1.4 is talking about the maximum distance that a consumer or a customer is willing to travel to purchase a good. So you will understand that we are talking about the range of goods. How far are you prepared to travel for that item that you want? Then looking at your threshold population. You will remember that threshold population, we are talking about the maximum number of customers that are needed in order for the business to occupy. So those numbers, it's the threshold population. So now, because the statement was talking about traveling, so that makes the range of goods to be correct. Then number 5, overcrowding is the result of an urban growth. Remember, urban growth, again, we are talking about the increase in the number of people who are in urban areas. So again, expansion, because they did not talk about the buildings, they did not talk, they only talked about the overcrowding, which is the people. So once it includes the expansion, we are talking about the buildings as well as the population or the people that are increasing. Then your number 6, the percentage of the number of people living in the urban area. We are talking about the percentage. So therefore, that is a level of urbanization. Then you're looking at urban population are the people who are in urban areas. Your number 7, developed countries. You'll remember those are the countries that are rich. And also, they have a high or a low rate of urbanization. Remember, these countries that are rich, it means all the services are in order. So each and everyone is having an employment or a sort of business. So there is no need for them to move into the urban areas. So therefore, the rate of urbanization is low. Then your 1.1.8, the towns that develop at important intersection. Our key there, or the action verb, is the intersection. So intersection is the junction. Because when you're looking at the commuter town, we don't have something called commuter town. Because we have seen that this is the town and also it talks about the intersection. That is why our answer was junction. Right? We're moving to figure 1.2. Your figure 1.2 is still the short objective questions. So your figure 1.1 has 8 questions, which means your figure 1.2 will have 7 questions. So 1.2 refers to the figure 1.2, showing the models of the urban of the structure. You choose the correct answer from the option given in the brackets to make the statement true. So again, you will remember that we have 3 models of the urban structure. So you are already given as a diagram. Number 1, you have your concentric zone, as you can see. And then your number 2, you have your sector model. And then lastly, we have our multiple nuclei. And then again, you are given a key. In that key, number 1, it's a CBD, whether it's a concentric or it's a sector or it's a multiple nuclei. Then your number 2, it's a wholesale or light manufacturing. Then your number 3, it's the low income residential. And then your number 4, it's the middle income residential. And then your number 5, it's your high income residential. You just look at the position. Where does it differ? Your number 6, it's your heavy manufacturing. Then your number 7, it's outlying business district. Remember, in short, we call them the OBD. And then your number 8 is the residential area. And then number 9 is the industrial area. Lastly, which is number 10, is the commuter zone. So let us check our questions. The first question, it says the model at which shows the land use arranged in wedges is known as. So our key there, yes, it's the model, but now it is arranged in wedges is known as what? So I've tried to include the diagram again so that it can be easier for you to just refer in one slide. So secondly, in the multiple nuclear or the concentric zone, the model, the CBD, is the focal point around which the urban area develops. So we're looking there which model where it is a focal point. Then your third question, the industries and low-cost housing develop along the main road. So if the industries as well as the low-cost housing, they develop along the main road or the railway in the concentric or in the sector model. So you just need to check the diagram again. And then after that, we're going to display the following questions, which is question 1.2.4 up to 1.2.7. The sector or multiple nuclear model is most applicable in the modern cities. So we're looking at the model that is most applicable at the modern cities. Then number 5, the sector or the concentric zone model does not consider the development along the transport route. So again, you check that does not consider the development along the transport route. Then your number 6, the cities that have several focal points around which urban development occurs are the example of, is it a concentric or is it a multiple nuclear? We are looking at the cities that have a several focal point between your concentric and your multiple nuclear. Then your 1.2.7, the sector or the multiple nuclear model displays the characteristics of the concentric zone. So we're going to go back to question 1.2.1 to 1.2.3. Again, I will give you 1 minute per question, which means I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer this. Then we move to question 1.2.4 to 1.2.7. Girls and boys, I hope we are done. So let us move to our question 1.2.4 to 1.2.7. For this one, I'm going to give you 4 minutes, and then after 4 minutes, we will now be able to do our corrections. Hoping that we are all done. So we're looking at our first question. As it says, the model which shows the land use arranged in the wedges is known as, it's a sector. As you can see, there is a wedge, there is a wedge, there is a wedge, there is another one. So it's the sector model. Second question, in the multiple nuclear or the concentric zone, the model, the CBD is the focal point around which the urban areas develop. As you can see there, this is the focal point number 1, which is the CBD. Then it is followed by the residential areas. And then your number 3, the industries and low-cost housing develop along the main road or the railway in the sector model. Again, you'll see there as you go through the key that this is the sector model. And then We're moving to question 1.2.4. Your question 1.2.4 is the sector or is the multiple nuclear model is most applicable in the modern cities. You will remember that the multiple nuclear, it has so many focal points or it has so many wedges. So therefore, in the modern cities or in the urban areas, the space is limited. So therefore, the multiple nuclear is most applicable. Your 1.2.5, the sector or the concentric zone is the concentric zone model does not consider the development along the transport route. As you can see there in the concentric, everything is in the focal around the CBD. So they do not consider the transport route. Then number 6, the cities that have a several focal point around which urban development occurs are the example of the multiple nuclear. As you can see, there are so many focal points. Then your 1.2.7, is it a sector or a multiple nuclear? The answer is the sector models. They display the characteristics of the concentric zone model. So as you can see there, it is around, even though it has those different wedges, but it also display the characteristics of the concentric zone. Then we're moving right along to our figure 1.3. Remember in the figure 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, it's where you will now have your short, your medium, as well as your high order questions. So 1.3, it says refer on the picture showing the urban decay. So by now you should ask yourself, what is the urban decay? Then you go through the picture. What are the things that you see that are the evidence that this picture is showing the urban decay? And then you go through the questions again so that you can see what they have asked. After you have gone through the question again, you go back to the picture so that you will be able to pinpoint those answers. So let us go through our tips. As I was still saying, you look at the picture that you are given. If it's not a picture or a diagram or an infographic, and then after that, you identify the features that you see in the diagram that are evident to support what the picture or the diagram is about. And then after that, you read the questions and then you underline those keywords as well as the action verbs. So, looking at our question, we have 5 questions. The first one, it says define the term urban decay. Why? Because the diagram or the picture is about the urban decay. So therefore, you need to start by defining it. Again, the importance of reading the terms or the importance of reading the concept so that you know their meaning. You can imagine if you don't understand what is the urban decay or you don't know what is it, then you won't be able to even answer the questions. So the figure 1.3 is out of 15 marks. So all the terms or all the definitions are your 2 marks. Your second question, you give the other name for urban decay. So it means the urban decay, it has the other name. So you need to give it for 1 mark. And then the other name for the urban decay. Then number 3, it says name 2 indicators. 2 indicators of urban decay in the picture. So now you see that your question 1.3.3, you need to refer to the picture again. Your 1.3.4, you explain 2 factors which may have contributed to the urban decay in the picture. So again, by understanding what is urban decay, you will be able to explain these 2 factors which have contributed to the urban decay where in the picture. Then your question 1.3.5, explain how the urban renewal will help to solve the problem of urban decay. So can you see that the question, they did not specify how many responses you need. By looking at the mark allocation, it's where you get an idea that you need to give 3 answers. So we're going to the picture again. I will give you just 3 minutes to identify the pictures as well as the questions that we have seen that are based on the picture. So after that 3 minutes, we will then display the questions. With the hope that you are done identifying the features in the picture. So now let us display the questions. So you have 1.3.1 up to 1.3.5. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work on these 5 questions, and then after 10 minutes, we will then proceed to the corrections. Grade 12, I hope we are now done. So moving into our corrections. So the first question that we are supposed to answer is to define the term urban decay. So looking at the term urban decay, as we have seen in the picture, those buildings are a very old buildings. So therefore, we are saying it when the buildings are being old, or why the buildings will be old. It's because they are being neglected, or it's because of the crime, or it's because of the lack of the economic support in that building. So most of you, maybe you might use that it when the buildings are becoming old, or you say when the buildings are becoming dilapidated. Then second question, it says give the other name for the urban decay. So you will understand that the urban decay, we call it the urban blight. And then our third question, it says you name the 2 indicators of the urban decay in the picture. So what you see in the picture, those are the dilapidated buildings, and also you have seen the evidence of the environmental pollution as we have seen, and also you have witnessed the high unemployment rate in those pictures. Remember, these are the things also that lead into the buildings being neglected. Then we're looking at our question 1.3.4. Your question 1.3.4, you were supposed to give 2 factors again, which have contributed into the urban decay in the picture. So amongst, we're looking at the decentralization of businesses. Remember, those buildings were used by the people who were working in those companies or in those industries. So as the companies decentralized, meaning they relocate into other areas, it means also the employees will also relocate with the company, leaving those buildings to be unattended. And then also we're looking at the municipal services which are lacking in those buildings. People will move out, and also the buildings will be left alone. And then also we're looking at the increase in the number of the migrants that put the area into a pressure of resources. You might find that the municipality now is unable to cater for the large number of people who are in those buildings. And also we're looking at the rural-urban migration because of the high number of people also who will be coming from the rural areas to the urban areas. It might lead into the area being neglected or being a zone of urban blight. Then we're looking at our question 1.3.5. It was a 3 times 2, meaning you need to give how many responses? 3. The question says, explain how the urban renewal will help to solve the problem. of the urban decay. You will remember that the urban renewal is when now you are renewing this old building, or you are making this old building into be useful again. So the high income adults which move into the area, that's the first point. And then we're looking at the second point. Also, the dilapidated buildings that needs to be renewed and to be maintained. Once the urban renewal has occurred, it means now they must make sure that those buildings, they are maintained and they are stored so that they can stay as new as possible. Then the third one, we're looking at the municipal services. Also, they're supposed to be paid. You might find some of the people who are living in those buildings, they do not pay for water, they do not pay for electricity. So therefore, it puts a strain into the municipality. Then we're also looking at the policing in the area, which is supposed to increase. Remember, some of those buildings, they use it to commit crime. So if there are police that are visible around, it will decrease these crime activities that are being done in those buildings. Then we're moving to figure 1.4. So as we move to figure 1.4, it says refer to the infographic below and answer the following question. So you are given an extract there as well as the street pattern, and then we are given the area that you see there is high buildings, then they have put A. So if you can go through the infographic or the extract, it says the office space, a major trend to decentralization. I thus expect a decentralized nodes and continue to be more popular location option. That's not to say that CBDs don't have an important place, especially in terms of their potential for the high density, affordable residential accommodation. But I believe the more decentralized urban business model is here to stay. Then we are looking at the street patterns. We have X is the street pattern, and then we have Y, it's another street pattern. Then we are looking at that area that has A. You see there are tall buildings, and then also we're looking there, that arrow that is dropping down, the movement of businesses into the residential area. Remember, when we're talking about decentralization, we are moving the industries. So they were here at A, now they are moving into the residential areas. So let us look at the questions. So before we look at the questions, the tips, we are given an extract as well as the picture. We have gone through the extract as well as the picture together, and we have read the extract and we have identified some of the features that we see in the photos. So now we're going through the question. So we have 6 questions in total. We're going to start with the first 3. You identify the land use zone indicated at A in the infographic. So again, when we are going back to the diagram, you now have an idea that you need to identify this land use zone at A. Then second question, you need to quote from the infographic. The importance of reading the infographic, because you need to quote from the infographic the importance of the land use zone identified as A. And then third question, you state one characteristic of the land use zone A. We are looking at the characteristic of the land use zone A that is evident in the infographic. So which means you cannot give any characteristic that is not evident on the infographic. Then let us move to the next question. You have your question 1.4.4 to question 1.4.6. So 1.4.4, it has 2, it's A and B. which street pattern, is it X or Y, is usually associated with the land use zone at A? So here you need to choose, is it the X or is it Y that is usually associated with the land use zone at A? Then B, you need to give a reason for your answer. If you are saying it's X, why it is X. If you are saying it is Y, then you need to give a reason. Then your 1.4.5, you give a term used for the movement of businesses away from the land use zone at A towards the suburbs. What do we call that term? Then lastly, you have your paragraph question. In your paragraph question, people and businesses are often forced to move out. So remember I said, as this process that is happening at question 1.4.5 will force both these, the people as well as the businesses, will often forced to move out of the land use zone A. So now, in a paragraph of approximately 8 lines, you discuss the factors that cause the businesses to move away from the land use zone at A. 4 times 2, meaning you need 4 responses. What are those factors that will cause a business to move away from the land use zone A? So now that we have seen all the 6 questions and you have noted which one you need to refer it into a diagram. So let us go back to our diagram so that you can identify these things on your own, and also for you to read the extract on your own so that you can see that answer where you need to quote from the extract. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to go through the diagram, and then after 3 minutes we will then proceed to our question. Girls and boys, with the hope that we are now ready to answer, we have your figure 1.4.1 up to figure 1.4.3. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer these 3 questions, and then after 3 minutes, we will then proceed to the next 3 questions. Right, I believe that we are now done. So let us check our next questions, which is question 1.4.4 to question 1.4.6. Because you have your paragraph question, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to answer these 3 questions, and then after 10 minutes, we will proceed to our corrections. Hoping that we are now ready for our corrections. Our first question there is we're supposed to identify that land use zone labeled by A. It's in the center. We have seen the tall buildings or the skyscrapers. Hence, we are saying it is CBD, or you give it the in full, which is the Central Business District. Then secondly, you are supposed to quote from the infographic the importance of the land use zone A, which is the CBD, why it is important. So there you're supposed to quote in terms of their potential for high density, affordable residential accommodation. And also don't forget to put the inverted commas to say that you have quoted from the extract. Then your question 1.4.3, you state one characteristic of the land use zone A that is evident in the infographic. So any is the tall buildings, or you say the skyscrapers, and also looking at the the building density, as we have seen that the buildings are very tall, and also the high accessibility. You have seen that all the roads are leading into the CBD, so any of the three. Then your 1.4.4, A, you are supposed to choose the street pattern. Is it X or is it Y that is usually associated with the CBD? So we are looking there, it is Y, which is a gridiron street pattern. Then at B, you are supposed to give a reason. Why are you saying Y, which is the gridiron, is the one that is associated with the CBD? So you are seeing there that all the roads or all the areas in the CBD, they have an easy layout, or the construction as well as the subdivide of the plots. So it means your pattern Y, which is your gridiron, this is the pattern that is easy to construct, and also it is cheap and it has many intersections. Then your 1.4.5, you give a term that you use for the movement of businesses away from the land use zone A, which is the CBD, towards the suburbs. So we call it a decentralization. Then we're moving to our paragraph question. In our paragraph question, you are supposed to discuss the factors that cause the businesses to move away from the CBD. So amongst those factors, you will understand that because of the number of people who are using that route in the CBD, so it will lead into the overcrowding. So the overcrowding, it will also mean the space will be limited in the CBD. Then secondly, as I've said, that all people want to be in the CBD, so therefore the traffic congestion will also be a problem, because each and everyone in the morning or in the afternoon, they will be traveling the same route. Then also we are looking at the open decay force people also, as well as the business into the suburbs. You will remember that these decay buildings or these dilapidated buildings are also found in the CBD. So amongst other options that we can look at, we're looking at the high crime also is found in the CBD. Remember, there is a overcrowding, so some are there just to commit crime. Then your figure 1.5 refers to the extract below on the informal settlement. So again, you start by reading the infograph or the extract that you are given, and then after that you read the questions. As we have read the questions, now you will have an understanding which questions you're supposed to refer them into the extract. So we have our extract with the student teacher shares the ideas about improving informal settlement in South Africa. In South Africa, 25.6% of the population live in the informal dwellings. You will remember another name for the informal settlement, we call them the informal dwellings. The numbers increasing annually in the urban areas. The informal dwellings are temporary structures built with the materials such as cardboard, as well as your asbestos and your corrugated iron. Remember again, these are the characteristics. If the question is asking about the characteristics of the informal settlement or the informal dwellers, you look at the material that they have used to build those housing. They tend not to be compliant with the building regulations. These unplanned settlements lack resources, infrastructure, and basic services. The waste is discharged into the clean water sources, and people have to use energy sources like coal, illegally connected electricity, gas, as well as paraffin. This pose a risk of fires and the release of harmful gases into the atmosphere. The growth of unplanned settlements also creates challenges for healthcare provision, security, education, prospects, and the environmental sustainability. Government policies need to address these issues, but education is key in fostering respect for the environment. So now, let us go check the questions. The question there, it says, the first one, the informal settlement are located. Is it in the rural or in the urban areas? That's your first question. You need to choose where are they located. Then second question, the informal settlement results into the counter-urbanization or into the urban sprawl. Another two concepts that you need to understand. So we're looking at the informal settlement that will result into either of these concepts or either of these terms. Is it the counter-urbanization or is it the urban sprawl? Then your question 3, you state one reason why people settle in the informal settlement. One reason. Then number 4, give 2 social injustices that people living in the informal settlement face. So 2 times 1, meaning you give 2 injustices that will give you 1 mark each. Then the next 2 question, it says, your question 1.5.5, you describe 2 ways in which the shack dwellers often show their growing discontent. Growing discontent, they've put unhappiness so that you understand. If you don't understand what is growing discontent, it means unhappiness. So what are the 2 ways they've used to show their unhappiness? 2 times 2. Then your question 1.5.6, it's a 3 times 1 times 2. You suggest measurements that the government could implement to address the social injustice that are faced by the people who are living in the informal settlement. So as we have seen that the question, they did not say suggest 3 measures, but by looking at the mark allocation, it says 3 times 2, meaning you need to give 3 responses. So now that we have seen the 6 questions, so I'm gonna go back to the extract so that you read the extract on your own, and then after that we proceed to the questions. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to read the extract on your own, and then after that we'll then display the questions. With the hope that you are now ready to answer the questions. So you have your 4 questions, starting with your question A1, which is your informal settlement are located. Is it the rural or is it the urban? And then after that, up to question 1.5.4, where you need to give 2 social injustices. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes to answer these 4 questions, and then after 4 minutes, we will proceed to question 1.5.5 up to 1.5.6. Girls and boys, I believe that you are done. So now let us move to question 1.5.5 up to 1.5.6. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work on these two questions because you still need to discuss or to describe the two ways there in which people, they show their unhappiness, those ones who are in the shack dwellers. How, in which ways do they use in South Africa? It's the 2 times 2, meaning you need 2 responses that will give you the total of 4 marks. And then your 1.5.6, now you need to give the strategies or the measurements that the government could implement in order to address these social injustices that are faced by these people in the informal settlement, your 3 times 2. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes so that you structure your answers properly without any rush. And then after 10 minutes, we proceed to the corrections. I believe that we are done. So looking at our first question, the informal settlement are located in the urban areas. Remember, the people who are the informal dwellers are the ones who have moved from the rural areas with the hope that they will have better opportunities as they were having in the rural areas. Now, only to find that as the more numbers coming into the urban areas, there will be the shortage of housing because some of them, they will not be able to find their employment, so therefore they won't afford to live in a proper area or into a more decent area, so they then tend to live in the informal settlement. So the informal settlement, you will only find them in the urban areas. Then secondly, the informal settlement, they result into the counter-urbanization or into the urban sprawl. Remember the urban settlement, these people, they give themselves the land. So therefore, they build their settlement illegally. So that is the urban sprawl because we're looking at the uncontrollable development in the cities. When we're looking at the counter-urbanization, remember, it's the time when people are going back to rural areas. We call them the counter-urbanization. Then, your question 1.5.3, you were supposed to give one reason why people settle in the informal settlement. So again, poverty is one of them, and also the unemployment. If people are unemployed, again, they won't be able to buy houses or to be able to pay for bond every month or to be able to rent every month. And also we're looking at, because of the high number of unemployed in South Africa, then we're looking at the people who lack the skills, even if the employment was there, but because that person doesn't have a necessary skill, so therefore they won't be employable. And as well as the high cost of housing, we're looking at the rate at which the bonds are being calculated. It's very high. So some of the people, even if they are employed, but they cannot afford to pay for the bond or to even rent. And also we're looking at no proper documentation, especially the ones who are coming outside of the country. They don't have a proper documentation, which means they cannot afford to get a decent job. Then your 1.5.4, you give 2 social injustices. Remember, the word injustice is a disadvantage to the people. So social injustice that people living in the informal settlement face. Remember, they are there. Each and every one of us, we have witnessed or we have seen how are the conditions in this informal settlement. They are very clustered. It means even the diseases, they spread easily. It's an injustice for them. We're looking at the social issues. There is no privacy because they lack space. You find in one shack, there is maybe 5 or 6 or even 10 members in one shack. And also we're looking at the overcrowding. It's also a injustice. Again, overcrowding will lead into a lack of privacy, as well as the lack of hygiene. Those people, they don't have a necessary sanitation, so the hygiene is highly a problem. We're looking at the lack of basic services such as water, your sanitation, as well as your electricity, and also the high crime rates. Remember, those people, they are unemployed, so therefore they will tend into crime. Then your 1.5.5, you describe the two ways in which shack dwellers often show their growing discontent, which is unhappiness in South Africa. So you should know that these people, they tend to protest. So as they protest, they will burn tires, they will throw stone in the road so that they can block the road. So by doing that, also some of them, they can even loot, because remember, those people, they are unhappy, they are not working, poverty is very high. So those are the amongst the things that they show their unhappiness in South Africa. Then your 1.5.6, you are supposed to give suggestion or the strategies that the government could implement in order to address the social injustice that is faced by the people who are living in the informal settlement. So we're looking there amongst is to provide the cheap houses, or by the government to build those houses that we call the RDP houses, so that they can have a proper housing. Also, we are looking at to provide them with those services like your water as well as your electricity. Also, the provision of the sanitation, so that these people, they can have the justice that they are looking for. So we need to summarize what we have learned so far. We have learned about the urban settlement, a concept. We have looked into the urban decay, and we have learned about the models of urban structure, and we have looked into the street patterns, and then we have looked into the informal settlement, and then lastly we have looked into the land use zone. So to give you the preview of our next lesson, we're going to focus on paper 2 revision, which is question 2. So under question 2, you know by now that it's economic geography. So we have come to an end of our lesson today. Hopefully you have enjoyed the lesson, but most of all, I hope we have learned something today. Thank you, and stay tuned for the next lesson.